I moved to a new planet, and every neighbor was an alien woman watching closely. John Carter stared out of the small shuttle window as Sarathis 7 came into view. The planet glowed with colors he had never seen before. Its sky was a soft purple, and the sun, or what he thought was the sun, shone in pale green light. Floating rock formations hovered in the distance, and the forest shimmered with faint blue and pink lights. It was beautiful, but it felt strange, almost alive. He tightened his grip on the straps of his bag and took a deep breath. This was not Earth. This was not home, but John had wanted a new start, and Zarathis 7 promised just that. He was leaving behind crowded cities, endless traffic, and the constant noise of humans who never seemed to stop. Here, he hoped he could live quietly, work on his engineering projects, and maybe find some peace. The shuttle landed softly on a wide platform near a small settlement. John stepped out, his boots crunching against the smooth, dark ground. A gentle wind carried a scent he did not recognize, sweet but strange, like flowers he had never seen. The settlement was made of small houses, arranged neatly in rows. Each house had a small garden with plants that glowed faintly in the evening light. As John walked toward his assigned home, he noticed movement in the windows of the houses around him. Figures were standing there, staring. They were not human. Their shapes were humanoid, but their skin had patterns of light that moved like soft waves. Their eyes glowed faintly and their long limbs moved with grace. They were all women, and they were all watching him. John froze for a moment. He had read about aliens before, studied their biology and culture, but seeing them like this, so close and so quiet, was different. He forced a smile and waved. One of the figures waved back, though her hand seemed too long and too elegant for a human. "Hello," John said softly, trying not to sound nervous. The figure tilted her head slightly. She did not speak but nodded, and her eyes seemed to follow him as he continued walking. John felt a shiver run down his spine. Being watched constantly was unsettling, even if the woman did not seem hostile. He reached his house, a small structure with a smooth, silver exterior. The door opened automatically as he approached, and he stepped inside. The interior was simple but comfortable. A kitchen area, a small living space, and a bedroom at the back. Everything was clean and functional. As he unpacked his few belongings, he noticed movement outside the window. One of the alien women was standing across the path, her glowing eyes fixed on him. He tried not to stare, but he could feel her gaze like a gentle pressure on his mind. "Do they always watch like this?" he muttered to himself. A soft voice answered him, though no one was in the room. "They are curious," it said. John jumped, looking around. The voice came from a small device on the wall, a translator. "You are safe," it continued. "They mean no harm. They only wish to learn about you." John let out a slow breath. He had expected isolation, but not this. Not a neighborhood full of alien women who observed every movement. Still, he reminded himself, they were not attacking. They were not trying to hurt him. Curiosity, he told himself. Curiosity could be tolerated. The next morning, John stepped outside to explore his new neighborhood. The alien women were already awake, standing near their houses, watching. He waved cautiously, and a few of them nodded. One of them, standing closer than the others, smiled softly. Her name, he would later learn, was Lena. "Hi," he said again, trying to sound friendly. "I'm John. I just moved in." Lena did not speak but tilted her head. Her eyes shimmered like the surface of a calm lake. She reached out a hand, showing him a small gesture that he guessed meant welcome. John hesitated but waved back. As he walked through the streets, he noticed details about the settlement. The ground was smooth but slightly flexible, almost like walking on thick rubber. The plants along the path emitted a faint light, enough to guide his steps without the need for lamps. The houses were all similar, but small differences hinted at the personalities of the residents. Some had more lights, others had decorations that glowed in patterns. John decided to visit the small market area. A few humans were already there, but most of the settlement was alien. He watched as the women moved gracefully between stalls, handling objects with care. One of them, Maya, noticed him and smiled faintly. She carried a small basket filled with fruits that glowed softly.
"You can try," she said, pointing at a fruit with a gesture. Her voice was melodic but quiet, almost musical.
John nodded and picked one of the fruits. It was soft and warm in his hand. He took a bite and was surprised. The taste was sweet and tangy, unlike anything on Earth.
"Good," Maya said,
and John laughed softly. She bowed slightly and moved on, her eyes still watching him. For the rest of the day, John tried to explore while avoiding drawing too much attention. But the alien women were everywhere. Whenever he walked past a house, they were at the windows. When he tried to read or cook, he felt their eyes on him. At first it was uncomfortable, but slowly, he began to notice something different. They were careful not to interfere. Their observation was quiet, patient, and oddly respectful. That evening, as the twin moons of Zarathus, 7 rose in the sky, John sat outside his house. He watched Lena across the street. She was moving her hands in slow, deliberate motions.
"Curious,"
he mimicked her gestures. She tilted her head, studying him. Then, slowly, she moved her hands in response, as if encouraging him. John smiled. For the first time, he felt a small connection. Maybe these neighbors were not just watchers. Maybe they were trying to communicate in a way he could not yet understand. Days passed. John began to notice patterns in the women's behavior. They came out at certain times, always observing, sometimes moving in groups, sometimes alone. Their attention was constant, but it was not oppressive. He even began to recognize some faces. Lena, Maya, Olivia, and others whose names he had yet to learn. One afternoon, while repairing a small device in his workshop, John realized he was not alone. Olivia stood near the doorway, her glowing eyes fixed on the circuit board in his hands. She tilted her head slightly, as if asking a question. John laughed softly.
"I'm just fixing this," he said. "Don't worry." Olivia stepped closer and touched the device gently.
She nodded. John noticed the gesture seemed approving. It was not interference. She was learning, observing, maybe even helping. Over time, John began to feel less like a stranger and more like part of the neighborhood. He started small routines, waving to the women each morning, bringing small gifts like simple trinkets from Earth, and trying to mimic their gestures. They responded with curiosity, sometimes with smiles that glowed softly in the dim light. One evening, while John sat by the glowing river near the settlement, he was approached by Lena. She walked beside him silently, her long hair flowing in the breeze. The river shimmered under the moons, reflecting colors that seemed impossible. "Do you always watch?" John asked softly, unsure if she understood him. Lena tilted her head, then pointed at him, then at herself, and finally to the sky. John thought for a moment and nodded. He understood the meaning. They watched to understand, not to harm. John laughed quietly. "I guess that's not so bad," he said. Lena's eyes seemed to glow brighter, and she stepped back, giving him space. The next morning, John woke to find a small gift outside his door, a cluster of glowing fruits and a leaf with intricate patterns. No note, just the gift. He smiled. The message was clear. They wanted friendship, not fear. By the end of the first week, John had accepted his unusual neighbors. He still felt watched, and sometimes it made him nervous, but he also felt protected. Every movement, every glance seemed to carry meaning, a language he was just beginning to learn. For the first time in a long while, John Carter felt hope. Life on Zarathus 7 was strange and alien, but maybe, just maybe, he could find a place here. A place where humans and aliens could coexist, where curiosity and respect could build something new.
As the sun set, casting long shadows across the glowing plants, John stood at his doorway and looked across the street at Lena, Maya, and the others.
They stood silently, watching, but not in a threatening way, watching in a way that made him feel part of something bigger, something alive, something new. And for the first time since he had left Earth, John Carter felt he belonged. John Carter had started to settle into his new life on Zarathus 7. Each morning he would step outside, wave at his neighbors, and slowly begin to learn their habits. He still felt watched, but the feeling was changing. It was no longer uncomfortable. The alien women were quiet, patient, and almost careful in how they observed him. He decided to explore the settlement more fully. The streets were lined with glowing plants, and soft sounds drifted from the alien homes, musical tones that seemed part of the wind. John noticed that each alien woman had her own style of movement. Lena was slow and graceful like water flowing. Maya was precise, every step measured. Olivia moved lightly, almost like she floated. Watching them was mesmerizing. John wanted to communicate better. He realized that gestures and simple words were his first tools. He started greeting each woman by name. "Good morning, Lena," or "Hello, Maya." Some of them responded with a nod, a smile, or a soft musical sound that the translator device sometimes turned into words. One afternoon, John walked to the small plaza at the center of the settlement. He saw a few humans there, trading supplies, but most of the residents were alien. The women moved among the stalls, exchanging fruits, small glowing devices, and fabrics that shimmered. They did not speak in a human language, but their movements were expressive. John tried to watch carefully, mimicking some gestures, and a few of the women noticed. They tilted their heads, then repeated his gestures. John laughed quietly.
A small voice came from his translator device. "They are curious," it said.
"You are learning their ways. They are learning yours." John smiled. It felt strange to have a device explain what he was already starting to understand. Still, he appreciated it. He walked past a stall where Maya was arranging glowing fruits. He greeted her. "Hello, Maya." "How are you today?" Maya tilted her head, then pointed to the fruits, then to John. He understood. She was offering him some. He hesitated for a moment, but took one. It was warm and soft in his hand. He bit into it, savoring the sweet, tangy flavor. "Delicious," he said. Maya's eyes glowed softly. She repeated a motion with her hands, as if asking him to follow. Curiosity made him move closer. She led him to a small area by the river, where other alien women were sitting. Lena and Olivia were already there, their eyes following John. Maya handed him another fruit. "Eat," she said through the translator. John took it. "Thank you," he said. He realized that they were trying to teach him about their culture, the fruit, the gestures, even their quiet way of sitting together. Everything was a lesson in understanding them. Over the next few days, John tried to interact more with his neighbors. He learned small gestures. A tilt of the head meant curiosity, a slight wave of the hands was greeting, and placing a hand on the chest showed trust. Slowly, he began to feel part of this unusual community. One evening, John was walking near the glowing river when he noticed movement in the bushes. He froze. A small alien figure stepped out. It was Sarah, a young resident he had not met before. Her skin shimmered with soft silver patterns, and her eyes glowed pale blue. "Hello," John said softly. "I don't think we have met." Sarah tilted her head. Then she made a motion with her hands, drawing shapes in the air. John frowned, trying to understand. Slowly he realized she was showing him a simple map of the settlement. John smiled. "Ah, thank you," he said. He pointed to himself, then to her, repeating the gesture she had made. Sarah seemed pleased. This encounter gave John an idea. If he could learn their gestures and they could learn his words, maybe they could communicate more easily. He began keeping a small notebook, drawing the gestures and writing their meanings. Each day he added new signs and words. One morning John woke to find a small note on his doorstep. It was written in glowing ink that faded quickly. He picked it up carefully. The translator device converted the symbols to words. "We wish to understand you. We're curious, not hostile." John laughed quietly. "Well, that is clear enough," he said. He felt a small warmth in his chest. The women were not a threat, they only wanted to learn about him. Later that day, John decided to explore further outside the settlement. He walked along a path lined with glowing plants, feeling the soft ground beneath his boots. Suddenly a strange sound echoed through the air, a soft humming, melodic and calm. He turned and saw Lena standing nearby, her eyes glowing brighter than usual. She gestured for him to follow. Curiosity made him obey. Lena led him to a small grove where the plants emitted soft, rhythmic lights. The air was warm, almost electric. Other alien women were there too, sitting in a circle. They all turned their eyes toward John, but instead of making him feel nervous, it felt welcoming. Maya stepped forward. She made a series of hand gestures, pointing at the plants, then at John. Slowly, John understood. The plants were alive, and the aliens were showing him how to read their rhythms. The glowing patterns reflected energy from the air, from the ground, and from living creatures. The women could sense these energies, and they were teaching John how to notice them. John spent hours in the grove, learning to watch the plants and feel the energy. He realized that life on Zarathus Sad was different. Humans were used to reading words, numbers, and faces, but here, life communicated through light, movement, and energy. By the end of the day, John felt tired but excited. He had learned something new about the alien women, about their culture, and about the planet itself. They were not just observers, they were teachers, guides, and protectors. The next morning, John received another small gift. Olivia had left a small device outside his door. It was smooth, warm, and emitted a soft light. John turned it over in his hands. The translator device spoke. For understanding. Watch, learn, and remember. John smiled. The alien women were patient and kind in their own way. Each day brought new lessons, small gestures of trust, and deeper understanding. He realized that the neighborhood, once intimidating, was slowly becoming a place of learning and connection.
Even with these positive experiences, John could not ignore the occasional unease.
Sometimes, when he looked at the women watching from the windows, he felt a small shiver run down his spine. He reminded himself that observation was not always comfort. There was also a test, a way to see how we reacted, how we adapted. But he tried not to dwell on it. Instead, John focused on learning. He practiced the gestures, tried to repeat the hand movements, and even attempted small musical tones that the women sometimes used. Lena and Sarah seemed to notice his efforts, nodding or tilting their heads in approval. Each small success felt rewarding. One evening, John decided to try something new. He gathered a few simple objects from his home, tools, small trinkets, and a few earth books, and placed them outside his door. Then he stepped back and waited. Slowly, one by one, the alien women approached. Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah each examined the items. They touched them carefully, their glowing fingers brushing lightly against the objects. Lena tilted her head, then pointed at John, and the translator device interpreted the gesture. You share with us, we share with you.
John laughed softly. I think that is fair,
he said. The women responded with soft glowing patterns along their arms and faces. The meaning was clear. Trust was growing. Over the next few days, John and the women continued these exchanges. Sometimes he brought small gifts from Earth. Sometimes they brought fruits, glowing devices, or patterns of light that he had never seen before. Each interaction taught him something new about their culture, their intentions, and the planet itself. John began to feel a strange sense of belonging. Zarathus 7 was no longer just a strange planet with intimidating neighbors. It was a place of learning, curiosity, and unexpected friendship. The alien women were not watching to judge him. They were watching to understand him, and slowly he was beginning to understand them. By the end of Part 2, John Carter had taken his first steps toward becoming part of the alien neighborhood. Observation had changed from discomfort to curiosity. Fear had begun to turn into trust. He knew that life on Zarathus 7 would not be easy, but he also knew he was not alone. And in the strange, glowing settlement surrounded by alien women, John felt the first real hope of a new beginning.
John Carter had begun to feel at home on Zarathus
7. But there was still a part of him that was curious and slightly uneasy about the alien women who watched him constantly. Their observation was gentle now, almost friendly, but he could not stop thinking about why they were really paying so much attention.
One morning, John decided to take a walk beyond the main settlement. The glowing plants along the paths led his way, and the air was cool and clean. He passed the houses of Lena, Maya, and Olivia. Each of them waved softly as he walked by, but their eyes still followed him closely. As he reached the edge of the settlement, he noticed movement in the trees. The wind made the plants sway and the glowing fruits blinked like tiny stars. John stopped. He thought he saw someone hiding, watching him. Then he realized it was Sarah, standing behind a bush, her silver skin shimmering in the soft light. "Sarah," he said gently.
"Hello?"
She tilted her head, then stepped out from behind the bush. She held something small in her hands, a thin crystal that glowed faintly. She handed it to him carefully. The translator device interpreted the gesture. Look, learn, know. John took the crystal and examined it. The light inside shifted and pulsed as he moved it. Suddenly he noticed something amazing. The crystal showed a faint image of the settlement, almost like a small map, with moving points of light. Some of the points were him. Others were the alien women. It seemed like the crystal was recording or observing everyone. He looked up at Sarah, his heart racing. "Is this watching us?" he asked. Sarah nodded slowly. Then she gestured toward the river and led him to a quiet spot. There, Lena and Maya were waiting. They all sat together, forming a small circle. John placed the crystal on the ground. The translator device spoke softly. "They will show you. Watch. Understand." The alien women began moving their hands in intricate patterns, forming glowing shapes in the air. John watched closely. Slowly he realized that they were showing him how they observed humans. Not to harm, not to control, but to learn. Each gesture, each pattern, represented a different type of observation. Some gestures were about health, some about behavior, some about adaptation to the planet. John sat in silence, amazed. He had expected fear or secrecy, but what he saw was patience and care. These women were assigned to monitor human settlers, and their goal was simple: to help humans survive on Zarathus. 7. After a while, Lena stepped closer and touched his shoulder gently. The translator device interpreted the gesture. "You are learning. You will understand more. Trust." John nodded slowly. He felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. He had been nervous about being watched, but now he realized that the observation was a form of protection. The alien women had skills that humans did not understand yet, and they wanted to make sure John and other settlers could live safely. Over the next few days, John began spending more time with the alien women. He learned small things about their abilities. Maya could control certain plants, making them grow faster or heal damaged areas. Olivia could sense the energy of the planet and detect dangerous areas. Bina and Sarah had healing skills that could repair minor injuries almost instantly. John tried to learn from them, but it was difficult. Their gestures were subtle, their movements precise, and the language was mostly in light and energy, not words. Still, he practiced every day. He carried a notebook where he drew the gestures, wrote the meanings, and tried to copy them. Slowly, he improved. One evening, John was repairing a small device near his home when Lena appeared at the doorway. She had a small box in her hands. The translator device spoke, "For you. Learn from this. Use carefully." John opened the box and found small devices made of light and crystal. They seemed simple at first, but as he examined them, he realized they could record energy patterns, track plant growth, and even detect subtle changes in the air. It was technology far beyond Earth, yet somehow simple to use with their guidance. "Thank you," he said. "This will help me a lot." Lena tilted her head and smiled faintly. Then she stepped back, leaving John to study the devices. The next day, John tried using the devices in his garden. He was amazed. He could see how the plants were responding to the soil, to the light, and even to his presence. He could adjust the small flows of water and energy, helping the plants grow faster and healthier. He realized that the alien women were giving him tools to survive, not just observing him. Later that week, John noticed unusual behavior from the neighbors. Several of the women gathered in the center of the settlement. They were moving their hands in a pattern he had not seen before, and the lights on their skin shifted rapidly. He felt drawn to them. As he approached, Lena and Maya came forward. The translator device interpreted the gesture. "We will show you the truth. You are ready." John followed them into a quiet room in the settlement's central building. Inside, he saw images projected on the walls. They showed humans arriving on Zarathus, 7, being observed and gradually learning to live safely. The alien women had been assigned to watch over the settlers for years. Every action, every reaction, every movement of humans was recorded and studied to help them survive. John felt a mixture of awe and relief. "So, you were watching me all this time?"
To help me?
Lena nodded. Maya stepped forward and touched his hand gently.
The translator device said, "We watch, we teach, we protect. You are not alone." John smiled. For the first time, the constant observation that had made him uneasy now felt comforting. He realized that these women had been waiting for humans to arrive, preparing for them, and making sure that the settlement would succeed. That night, John sat outside his house, thinking about what he had learned. The moons rose slowly in the purple sky, casting soft light on the glowing plants. He thought about his life on Earth and how different this world was. The alien women who had seemed strange and intimidating at first were now guides, teachers, and protectors. Over the next few days, John worked closely with the alien women. He learned more about their abilities, practiced the gestures, and experimented with the tools they had given him. He began to understand subtle signs. A shift in light on their skin meant a warning, a tilt of the head meant curiosity, and a slow movement of hands meant trust. John also started teaching the women about humans. He showed them simple tools, told them about Earth, and even shared small stories. The women listened carefully, absorbing every detail. It was a mutual exchange. Curiosity was not one-sided. Humans and aliens were learning from each other. One day, John noticed that the settlement's plants were struggling in one area. He realized it was a small patch near the river where the soil was weak. Using the devices the women had given him, he adjusted the water flow and energy patterns. The plants responded immediately, growing stronger and glowing more brightly. The alien women watched quietly from a distance, their eyes glowing softly. Lena approached and touched his shoulder. The translator device said, "You learn quickly. You adapt. You survive." John felt proud. For the first time, he understood that survival on Zarathus 7 was not just about technology or strength. It was about observation, learning, and cooperation. Humans and aliens could work together. That evening, John received another small gift. Maya had left a glowing fruit outside his door, along with a small crystal. The translator device said, "For understanding, learn together, grow together." John held the crystal carefully. He realized that Zarathus 7 was teaching him more than just survival. It was teaching him patience, trust, and curiosity. The alien women were not just neighbors. They were mentors, friends, and protectors. By the end of Part 3, John Carter had uncovered the secret behind the constant observation. The alien women had watched him not to scare him, but to help him adapt, survive, and thrive. He had begun to understand their gestures, their tools, and their way of life. Observation had turned into guidance, and fear had transformed into trust. John felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life on Zarathus 7 was strange, challenging, and beautiful. With the alien women's help, he was no longer alone. He was part of something bigger, a community of humans and aliens working together to survive and learn. And for the first time, John Carter realized that the alien neighbors who had seemed so intimidating were not watching him with suspicion or judgment. They were watching with care, curiosity, and a desire to help. John smiled as he looked across the glowing settlement. Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah were there, watching softly, waiting, teaching. He felt a small warmth in his chest. This was not just a new planet. It was a place where humans could belong, where trust could grow, and where life, in all its strange forms, could flourish. John Carter had started to feel a part of Zarathus. 7. The alien women were no longer just neighbors or observers. They were guides, teachers, and friends. Each day he spent with them brought new knowledge about the planet, its life forms, and the ways humans could adapt and thrive. One morning John woke early and stepped outside. The sky was a soft purple, and the twin suns of Zarathus 7 were just rising, casting gentle light across the settlement. Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah were already outside, moving through the streets with their usual grace. When they saw John, they waved, and he waved back. Today he felt ready to try something new. He wanted to work directly with the alien women to improve his home and the surrounding area. He picked up a few tools and headed toward his small garden. The glowing plants in his yard had been thriving, thanks to the devices and guidance the women had given him, but he thought he could make them even better. Lena arrived first, standing quietly by the edge of the garden. She tilted her head, and the translator device interpreted the gesture. Work together. Learn together. John nodded eagerly. Maya and Olivia joined soon after. Together they began teaching John more advanced techniques. Maya used her ability to control plant growth, guiding his hands as he adjusted the roots and branches. Olivia helped him sense the flow of energy through the soil, showing him where the plants would grow strongest. John worked carefully, learning to feel the subtle vibrations in the ground and the faint pulses of light in the plants. It was difficult at first, but the women were patient, correcting him gently with gestures and soft musical sounds. Sarah handed him a small crystal that recorded the energy patterns. John studied it carefully, comparing the recordings to the real plants. Slowly he began to understand. By midday the garden looked healthier than ever. The plants glowed brighter, their leaves stretched toward the suns, and small flowers began to bloom. John stepped back and smiled. Lena nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in approval. Maya clapped her hands softly, a sound like a gentle chime, and Olivia touched his shoulder, a gesture that meant encouragement. "You are learning fast," the translator device said, interpreting their gestures. John felt proud, but he also felt grateful. The alien women were not just teaching him how to survive. They were teaching him how to thrive, how to understand the planet and its life, and how to work together in harmony. Over the next few days, John expanded his efforts. He worked with the women to build small water channels that flowed gently through the gardens. Olivia guided the energy flow, making sure that water reached every plant efficiently. Maya used her abilities to stimulate growth in weaker plants, and Lena and Sarah helped John maintain balance in the soil. Each day, John learned more. He began noticing small details he had missed before, the way certain plants reacted to the light, the subtle shifts in energy around different areas, and the patterns in which the alien women moved. Observation, which had once made him uneasy, had now become a vital skill. He watched them closely, learning how to mirror their gestures and understand their intentions. One afternoon, John decided to explore a small forested area near the settlement. The glowing plants and trees made the forest feel alive, and the air was thick with sweet, unfamiliar scents. He walked carefully, aware that some areas could be dangerous. As he moved deeper, he noticed movement ahead. Lena and Maya were there, guiding a group of alien women and a few humans he had not met before. They were working together to build a small shelter, using materials from the forest. John approached cautiously. "Can I help?" he asked. Lena smiled and gestured towards the structure. The translator device interpreted, "Yes, help, learn, build." John joined in eagerly. He lifted branches, arranged supports, and followed the women's guidance. The humans around him also worked, but it was clear that the alien women were leading the project, coordinating everyone with gestures, subtle lights, and soft sounds. John marveled at how efficiently they worked. It was teamwork unlike anything he had seen on Earth. By the end of the day, the shelter was complete. It was simple, but strong and durable, blending perfectly with the forest. John stepped back and looked at the work. The alien women stood nearby, their eyes glowing softly. They had not just guided the building. They had shown him how to think about space, balance, and energy in a way humans rarely considered.
As they walked back to the settlement, John realized something important.
Survival on Zarathus. 7 was not about individual skill or strength. It was about observation, learning, and collaboration. Humans and aliens working together could achieve far more than either could alone. That evening, John decided to try teaching the women something from Earth. He brought out a small device that played music. At first, the women were cautious, tilting their heads as the sounds filled the air. But soon they began to respond, moving their hands and bodies in subtle ways that matched the rhythm. John laughed softly. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning of shared culture. Over the next few days, these lessons continued. John showed them simple games, taught them about Earth customs, and shared stories of life back home. In return, they taught him more advanced techniques for survival, energy flow, and understanding the planet. Each exchange built trust and friendship. One morning, John noticed that the energy in a nearby area of the settlement was weak. Plants were growing slowly, and small animals seemed uneasy. He called Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah to help. Together, they assessed the problem. Olivia detected disruptions in the energy flow. Maya adjusted plant growth, and Lena and Sarah worked to balance the environment. John followed their guidance carefully. Using the crystals and tools they had given him, he adjusted the soil, water, and energy patterns. Slowly, the area began to stabilize. Plants grew stronger, small animals returned, and the air felt lighter. John felt a sense of accomplishment. He was not just surviving, he was helping the environment thrive. That evening, the alien women gathered around him. They did not speak, but their gestures and glowing patterns were full of approval and encouragement. The translator device said softly, "You grow, you learn. You protect, you belong." John felt warmth in his chest. He realized that Zarathus 7 was no longer just a new home. It was a place of learning, trust, and friendship. The alien women, who had once seemed distant and mysterious, were now partners and mentors. They had shared their knowledge, patience, and care. And in return, John had shared his curiosity, effort, and respect. Over the following weeks, John continued to integrate fully into the settlement. He worked with the women to design small systems for water distribution, energy collection, and plant growth. He experimented with the glowing plants, learning to understand subtle signs of health and balance. He even began helping other humans in the settlement, teaching them what he had learned. The alien women watched him with their gentle attention, guiding when necessary, but allowing him space to make his own decisions. John had come to understand that observation was not control. It was teaching, protection, and care. One evening, John stood by the river, looking at the glowing water and plants. Lena joined him, followed by Maya, Olivia, and Sarah. They stood silently, watching the reflection of the moons on the water. John realized that he had grown in more ways than he expected. He understood more about the planet, about life, and about the importance of collaboration. "Thank you," John said softly. He gestured to the women, trying to express the gratitude he felt. Lena tilted her head, and the translator device interpreted, "You are learning. You are growing. You are part of us." John smiled. For the first time, he felt fully at home. The alien women were no longer observers. They were his friends, his teachers, and his allies. Together, they had built more than just gardens and shelters. They had built trust, understanding, and a sense of community. As the moons rose higher, casting soft light across the glowing plants, John knew that the future on Zarathus 7 was bright. Survival was no longer just about enduring the strange planet. It was about learning, growing, and collaborating. And with the alien women by his side, he knew that humans could thrive in ways he had never imagined. By the end of Part 4, John Carter had not only adapted to life on Zarathus 7, but had begun to actively collaborate with the alien women. Observation had turned into guidance. Teaching had turned into partnership. and fear had turned into trust. Life on the new planet was still challenging, but together, humans and aliens were creating something extraordinary. John Carter had come a long way since he first arrived on Zarathus. 7. At first, he had felt strange, nervous, and uneasy. Every neighbor was an alien woman, watching him closely, and he had not understood their purpose. Now, months later, he knew that their observation had been care, not suspicion. He had learned from them, worked with them, and even begun to teach them some human ways in return. The mornings on Zarathus, 7 were always beautiful. The twin suns rose slowly, painting the sky with shades of purple, pink, and green. John stepped outside his home, greeted by the soft glow of the plants in his garden. Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah were already up, moving through the streets. Their skin glowed faintly in the early light, and their movements were calm and elegant. "Good morning," John said, waving to them. They responded with soft gestures and small glowing patterns on their skin. The translator device interpreted their movements. "Good morning, John. Today we share and learn." John smiled. Sharing and learning had become the rhythm of his life. Every day was an opportunity to understand more about the planet, the alien women, and himself. Today, John had decided to organize a small festival in the settlement. It would be a combination of human and alien traditions, a way to celebrate cooperation, trust, and understanding. He had spent weeks preparing, with the alien women helping him plan. They showed him how to use the glowing plants for decorations, how to create energy patterns that danced with light, and how to prepare food that combined earth flavors with local fruits. By mid-morning, the settlement was alive with activity. Humans and aliens worked side by side, arranging decorations, setting up tables, and creating small lanterns from crystals. John moved among them, helping where he could, and learning more about the alien techniques. Lena approached him, moving with her usual grace. She gestured toward a circle of glowing plants. The translator device interpreted, "We share knowledge. Place your gifts here." John placed a few small trinkets from Earth among the plants. Other humans and aliens followed, placing their own contributions, fruits, crystals, small tools, and simple Earth objects. Slowly, the circle of shared gifts grew, glowing with light and energy. By afternoon, the festival began. Music played from small devices John had brought from Earth. The alien women responded with soft movements, their bodies and hands creating patterns of light that matched the rhythms. Humans laughed, clapped, and tried to follow along, and soon everyone was participating in a shared dance of sound and light. John noticed Maya moving near the river, guiding a small group of humans and aliens as they prepared floating lanterns. Olivia hovered nearby, sensing the energy currents in the air, ensuring the lanterns would drift safely. Lena and Sarah were watching the crowd, their eyes calm and glowing, making subtle gestures that encouraged cooperation. John felt a deep sense of joy. This was more than a celebration. It was proof of what they had built together. Humans and aliens, learning from each other, working together, and creating something beautiful. After the initial excitement, John gathered a small group near the glowing plants for a more personal sharing. He told stories of Earth, of life in cities and towns, of rivers, mountains, and forests. The alien women listened carefully, their eyes glowing softly as they absorbed every word. He even showed them pictures he had drawn of Earth landscapes, and they responded with gestures and glowing patterns that seemed like admiration. In return, the women shared more of their knowledge. They showed John how to read subtle changes in the air, how to sense small shifts in energy that predicted weather or plant growth, and even how to heal minor injuries with their techniques.
John was amazed at how much he had learned and how much more there was to discover.
As the twin moons rose that evening, casting silver light across the settlement, John and the women walked along the river. The glowing plants reflected in the water, and small creatures moved quietly among the reeds. The air was warm and calm, and the sounds of celebration were still faintly audible from the settlement. "Thank you," John said softly, looking at Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah. "I could not have done any of this without you." Lena tilted her head and touched his shoulder gently. The translator device interpreted, "You learn. You grow. You belong. John smiled, belonging. That was the word he had been searching for since he first arrived. Zarathus. 7 had been strange, foreign, and sometimes frightening, but now it was home. The alien women had taught him patience, observation, and cooperation. They had shown him that life on this planet was not about fear or isolation. It was about trust, learning, and friendship. Over the next few weeks, John continued to work with the alien women and other humans to improve the settlement. They built new shelters, developed better gardens, and created systems for collecting and storing water. John had learned to read the subtle signs of the planet, changes in soil, shifts in energy, and movements of plants and animals. With the guidance of the alien women, he could predict changes, prevent problems, and ensure that the settlement remained safe and thriving. The alien women also learned from John. They asked about Earth, about human emotions, and about customs. He taught them small games, simple songs, and even some Earth stories. They were fascinated by the differences in culture, and John noticed that they adapted quickly, combining their knowledge with his teachings. One afternoon, as John worked in the central garden, Olivia approached with a small device that pulsed softly in her hands. The translator device interpreted, "For you, record growth, share with others." John took the device carefully and began recording the energy and growth patterns of the plants in the garden. Soon, other humans joined him, curious about the techniques and tools. The alien women guided them, using gestures and glowing patterns to show the correct methods. John realized that the knowledge they had shared with him was now spreading to others, ensuring that the settlement as a whole could thrive.
As weeks turned into months, John noticed subtle changes in the settlement.
The humans were more confident, the alien women more relaxed around them, and the plants, animals, and energy flows of the planet all seemed healthier. Cooperation and trust had created not just survival, but growth and prosperity. One evening, John and the women stood on a small hill overlooking the settlement. The twin moons cast their soft light across the glowing streets, gardens, and homes. John felt a deep sense of peace. "Do you ever get tired of watching?" John asked softly, looking at Lena and Maya. They tilted their heads slightly, and the translator device interpreted, "Watching is understanding. Understanding is care. Care is connection." John smiled. He realized that what had seemed strange and unsettling at first, the constant observation, was actually the foundation of trust. The alien women had watched him not to judge or control, but to protect, teach, and connect. He thought back to his first days on Zarathus. 7, how he had felt nervous and unsure. Now he felt confident and safe. He had learned to live in harmony with the alien women and the planet itself. He had grown stronger, wiser, and more patient. And most importantly, he had found a place where he belonged. That night, as the moons reflected on the river, John sat with Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah. They shared simple fruits, soft light patterns, and quiet gestures of friendship. The translator device interpreted their movements. Together, we thrive. Together, we belong. Together, we grow. John nodded, feeling a warmth in his heart. He had come to Zarathus 7 seeking a new life, and he had found more than survival. He had found community, trust, and friendship across worlds. The alien women who had once seemed distant and mysterious were now partners, teachers, and friends. He felt connected to the planet, to the people around him, and to something larger than himself. The settlement was alive with energy. Plants glowed softly, animals moved peacefully, and humans and aliens worked together in harmony. John watched the glowing streets, the lights reflecting on the soft ground, and felt pride in what they had achieved. Survival was no longer a struggle. It was a shared adventure, a journey of understanding and growth. By the time the moon set, casting a calm light over the settlement, John knew that life on Zarathus 7 had become a story of cooperation, trust, and friendship. The alien women had taught him that observation was not suspicion, that learning was not limitation, and that together humans and aliens could thrive in ways neither could alone. John Carter smiled as he stood in the glow of the settlement. He looked at Lena, Maya, Olivia, and Sarah, at the humans who had joined him, and at the glowing plants and felt the first true sense of belonging he had ever known. Zarathis 7 was no longer strange, no longer frightening. It was home, and for the first time John realized that being watched had been a gift. The alien women had not only observed him, they had guided him, protected him, and taught him to grow. Together, they had built a world where humans and aliens could thrive. And together they would continue to grow, learning from each other and from the strange, beautiful planet that was now home.